desperate teams, and desperation makes teams do things that they essentially maybe wouldn't have done, maybe would have held it off. Maybe you have to give up more than you would because you're desperate. And you saw that the day after the game where the Jets traded for Davante Adams. Now, if you heard last episode, and you've heard many people talk, Dan Orlowski, Shannon Sharp, most people have talked about this. It was almost a foregone conclusion that once you heard about unease, once you heard that Davante Adams' time in Oak or in Vegas was essentially over, you pretty much knew he was going to be a Jet. I know that there were stories saying, oh, well, they may not. The Raiders may not trade him because they're not getting what they asked for. That's where desperation comes in. I'll say this. I'm not saying he wouldn't be a Jet. But I'm sure that if the Jets would have won against the Bills on Monday Night Football, I don't think Davante Adams would have been a Jet on Wednesday, October 16th. Or, let me back up. I don't think he would have been a Jet that Tuesday, yesterday. Ain't no way. Desperation. This team is desperate. And let me ask you, let me tell you why the Jets are desperate. The Jets are desperate because of perception. The Jets are desperate. Like I said, going into this season, there is a lot of expectation on this Jets team. Not just from the outside, but from the inside. This team is you know what it is? You remember when it's interesting how we look at quote unquote super teams, how we look at teams that are built to win it all immediately. And it's interesting because I was thinking about how we would look at them differently if they didn't essentially meet their goal. Like, what if that Rams team that had Matthew Stafford, that had Aaron Donald, that had Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller, what if that team that was built to win that year, what if that team didn't win? We would look at that team. We will look at some of those players much differently. What if the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry and Kevin Durant didn't win? What if the Miami Heat with LeBron James, D. Wade, what if they never won? While I'm not calling the Jets a super team, but the Jets felt like they were that team that they were just a quarterback away. They had even with Robert Saleh. Now, you can say he was a bad coach. You can say he was a terrible coach. That's on you. And that's fine. I'm not saying he was the best coach. His record wasn't great. But what I am saying is, with Robert Saleh, this defense was humming. The Jets had one of the best defenses. It was just when you have Zach Wilson as your quarterback, you're always a step behind. And they felt that when you have Sauce Gardner, when you have Quentin Williams, when you have C.J. Mosley, you think that you're just a quarterback away because you don't have to worry about the defense. The defense is already top tier. So when you get a Hall of Fame quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you think, okay, we've said that we're a quarterback away. Now we have one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. We should be Super Bowl contenders. Now you can kind of chalk last year away because Aaron Rodgers got hurt 4 plays into the season. But that also amplifies the pressure for this year. You have a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers. You got his safety blankets in Aaron Lazard. You still have Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall's coming back. All of the components of expectation are there. So when you look up and you're 2-4 and you haven't beat a winning team, you have not beat a team with a winning record. You have not beat a team with a competent quarterback yet. Those expectations that you have coming into the season, you cling on them so heavily. It's like, hold on. We thought we're a quarterback away. We spent so much money to rebuild this roster, mainly the offense. When you have Tyron Smith and you have all the piece on the offensive line, people were saying that there may be too much talent on the offensive line. So when you look up today and you're nowhere close to the expectation that you thought you would be, you have to figure out why. And when you're unable to look at the fact that a lot of the things that you swung at, you missed. A lot of the pitches that you swung at. Right now, the Aaron Rodgers move has been a miss. Right now, the offensive line has been a miss. When you're unwilling to live with that, when you're unwilling to admit that some of the moves that you thought were good weren't, at least up to this point, that turns into desperation. I said this last episode, or the episode when we were talking about Davante Adams. Davante Adams is still a number one receiver. I don't think he is the top receiver, but he's still a number one receiver. And it would be naive of me to think that Davante Adams on the Jets wouldn't be a plus. When you get a receiver as great as I believe a future Hall of Famer, when you have a future Hall of Fame quarterback and now a future Hall of Fame wide receiver that is as accomplished as both of them are together, I would say also, this is going to improve. This is going to help the Jets. The Jets are better today than they were on Monday. But you would also be naive into thinking that Davante Adams is the elixir that is going to change the fortunes of this Jets team. Davante Adams doesn't do anything to help this offensive line. Davante Adams doesn't do anything to now help with the defense that has been on decline. Davante Adams doesn't do anything to help the connection between Aaron Rodgers and someone like a Garrett Wilson. Davante Adams is a Band-Aid on a cut that needs stitches. Davante Adams is a Band-Aid on a broken arm. Yes, I'm not going to sit here and say that Davante Adams isn't going to help. And I think that he has an ability to help tremendously. But you would be foolish to think that Davante Adams now fixes the Jets. The last thing I'm going to say about the Jets before I talk about the other move that we saw shortly after Davante Adams is this. I've said this before. It's extremely hard to run away from the past, especially when remnants of the past is still in the present. The Jets have been a, let's say, inept organization for as long as I've been alive. They've had some a few good years sprinkled in it, but overall, they haven't been a marquee franchise. And one thing that we've seen, whether we talk about the turnaround for the Kansas City Chiefs, the turnaround for the Saints, the turnaround for the Colts, the turnaround for the Golden State Warriors, hell, the turnaround for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It usually takes more than one or two transactions, especially if remnants of gunk, remnants of the filth is still there. I'm not saying that the ownership is exactly to blame for this. But what I am saying is, what the Jets are trying to do is they're trying to change the trajectory of this team without knowing how to do it, without knowing the formula that it is. Look how long it took the Golden State Warriors to be the dynasty that they were. Look how long it took the Patriots to be good. The Jets, one thing that those teams didn't do, and that the Jets are doing, is they're letting desperation dictate their moves. Do I think that Davante Adams was a smart move? Yes. And I think it was the right move. That's why people, including myself, was saying that more than likely Davante Adams is going to be a Jet once he requested a trade out of Vegas. But if you think you're going to paint this, and if they think, which they clearly do, that Davante Adams is going to change the trajectory of this team, you are sadly mistaken. Davante Adams doesn't change the fact that Aaron Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers of old. Still really good, but he's not a great quarterback right now. Davante Adams doesn't change the fact that this offensive line that you spent a lot of money on has missed this season. This offensive line is terrible. If they're not allowing sacks, they're getting timely penalties, which is what we saw on Monday night. The Jets haven't shown to be a competent organization. And because you have an Aaron Rodgers and now you have a Davante Adams, they've been able to masquerade as one. But the thing about parties and the thing about masquerading as something is your true self is eventually going to come to the light. Eventually, you got to take that mask off. And what's unfortunate for Jets fans is I think they're starting to realize, even with a beautiful mask, even with a beautiful suit, once you take that mask off, you're still the same old Jets. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.